I was having y'all show about Rico from Street Scores, and wow, man, the end of an era. This is crazy. The Washington Commanders have traded Montez Sweat to the Bears for a high second round pick, and teams are also possibly interested in Chase Young, but most notably, the Commanders are interested in trading Chase Young. They're the ones fielding calls. They're the aggressors when it comes to the Chase Young situation. So we got to talk about everything that's going on. Are we going full rebuild? Is this potentially to trade up for a quarterback, or are we going to build around Sam Howell? Do we plan on even trying to pay Cameron Curl? And of course, we got to talk about Montez Sweat and what he contributed to the Commanders, his time here, why the Bears may have traded for him, because it's a really interesting trade. Why, if you're potentially rebuilding, are you trading for, I guess, what some would consider a dominant or elite top tier something, at the very least a good edge rusher, especially like a younger guy like this. Well, somewhat of a veteran, but still relatively young. The Bears move is confusing, but for the Commanders to get a high second round pick that's almost like a first round pick, essentially like a late first, is very interesting. Like, this is technically like a first round comp pick, if that was a possible thing, if that were a thing that the NFL actually did. But yeah, man, we got to dive into every angle on this. You know how Rico Street Scores get, man. We got to do a deep dive into this and how this ended up even becoming a second round pick. The Giants set the market with that trade to the Seahawks, so we got to dive into that as well. So before we dive into all of that, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned for all of the Commanders updates like these. Of course, I will be live streaming this upcoming game against the Patriots, and I mean, we'll see how this goes. We may be a completely different team by then. By the time I release this video, soon afterwards, maybe something else happens. The trade deadline officially ends at 4 p.m. So who knows what's going to happen. I'm probably going to end up looking stupid by the time I release this, or a few minutes later, Chase Young gets traded, or maybe we trade one of these veterans or something. Who knows? But stay tuned for all of the Commanders updates. Even though it's a busy Halloween, I got y'all. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get to it. Let's get it.
You tell your family you're going to be a commander.
Again, the Commanders have now traded defensive end Montez Sweat for a high second round pick, the Bears, Chicago Bears second round pick. And it's interesting too, because we were offered a third from Montez Sweat's hometown team, the Falcons. Y'all know I've always liked Montez Sweat a lot, just off of slightly biased reasons with him being from Atlanta. Always rooted for him. Antonio Gibson, Jamin Davis, Alex Armand, guys that are from like Atlanta or the metro Atlanta area. So I've always rooted for those guys. I've always really liked Montez Sweat's talent and everything. And I thought ideally he would probably end up going to his hometown team, because he would really probably love to play for him, to go back home and all of that type of stuff. But the Falcons only offered a third, and the logic was, well, if you're going to give us a third, worst case scenario, we just let him walk in free agency after the season. We keep him, and he helps us potentially win more games. And so it was like, what's the point if we just let him walk? We get a third round compensatory pick at worst. Why would we just go ahead and give him to you for the third that you have? Now, granted, the Falcons third will be higher, but I'm glad that we rolled the dice a little bit. We gambled a little bit, and we held out, and we went from whatever the Falcons third round pick may end up being, because they may actually win some games with the rest of their schedule. They're not looking too great right now. Behind the kids, a starting quarterback, and the rest of their schedule not being that tough. That Falcons pick may end up being like a mid third round pick. Now we get a high second round pick that, again, ultimately almost kind of looks like a late first, honestly. I'm not gonna lie. And it's also interesting too, because the Falcons offer for him, we played the Falcons, and then the Bears got him, and we also played the Bears. So those teams got first-hand looks against Montez Sweat to see if they truly wanted him or not. Also really interesting, Terry McLaurin is now the only remaining player from the Redskins 2019 draft class. That's kind of crazy, man. That's some interesting turnaround, but that's not the worst thing I've ever heard. I'm not really surprised that Terry McLaurin is the only one remaining at this point. Also, the trade market was kind of set after the Giants traded Pro Bowl defensive lineman Leonard Williams to the Seahawks for a 2nd and a 5th round pick. So even when that happened yesterday, we were kind of like, oh, okay, this is going to probably be the basis for what Montez Sweat's going to get. I was thinking that Montez Sweat would get more. I was hoping Montez Sweat would get more if we ended up trading him, or Chase Young, whoever we ended up trading. And so that actually came into fruition, because if you think about it, I know you hear Leonard Williams for 2nd and 5th round pick, Montez Sweat just for 2nd round pick. But we got to break it down, man, because the Giants are getting the NFC West division leading Seahawks 2nd and 5th round pick. That is definitely not worth, in totality, the Bears' 2nd round pick by itself. You wouldn't even be able to take that 2nd and 5th round pick of the Seahawks to trade up for the Bears' 2nd round pick in the draft coming up. So technically, we did outdo the Giants, at least there. The Giants beat us in the regular season, but then with the way our seasons are going, we may end up being happy about that by the time this season ends. We'll see though. But just to let you know, if the season ended today, Ian Rappaport says that Montez Sweat draft pick that we got from the Bears will be the 35th overall pick in the draft. Again, a very high 2nd. Really interesting. So I'm really interested in seeing what's going to happen with this. It's going to likely end up being somewhere between like 33 to 38, at worst 39. So that's still a really good pick. Highly doubt Ron Rivera had anything to deal with this. But I know this ownership group and whatever this next regime is going to end up being is going to be happy that we made this happen. I said, I think it was a couple of days ago, that the next ownership group would probably prefer to figure all of this out in the off season so they can make their own decisions. But Ron Rivera and Martin Mayhew, because he's definitely out as well. I feel like Martin Mayhew needs to go before anybody else. That move to move Montez Sweat for a 2nd round pick, the next regime is going to be happy about that. Again, I feel like the next regime would prefer to make their own moves, but for the Commanders to jump on this Montez Sweat situation while it's hot, you know what I'm saying, get him for an early 2nd round pick, a 35th pick as of today, the next regime is going to be happy about that. Josh Harris is happy about that right now. But this is a really interesting situation because, again, Montez Sweat is definitely due to hit free agency in March. And I would definitely assume that the Commanders did everything that they could to try to re-sign him. Because, again, like I said earlier in the intro, and we're going to bring this up later when we talk about Chase Young, the Commanders preferred Montez Sweat. They prioritized Montez Sweat, but also the trade market was just hotter for Montez Sweat. So they're like, I guess we got to trade Montez Sweat. We'll see what we can do with Chase Young afterwards. But yeah, I'm assuming they talked to his agent, they talked to him and everything, and tried to figure out what Montez Sweat wanted long term. And I guess they just weren't willing to do that. And it was just like, well, I guess we might as well go ahead and get the trade out the way. But this is really interesting too, because this is one of the best trades I've seen from the Burgundy and Gold in years. Like, I'm just assuming that anybody here, Martin Mayhew, Ron Rivera, none of those guys had anything to do with this trade. This had to be Josh Harris by himself. And so it's really interesting now that we lost to the Bears, and then they gave us a top 40 pick in return. Hey, man, I'll take it. I'll take it. So having the Chicago Bears 2nd round pick, and then also potentially with the high draft picks we may have in the 1st and 2nd, depending on how the season goes for the remainder of the season. It's not looking too good because we couldn't win with Montez Sweat. What's the chances of us being able to win without Montez Sweat? So this is going to be really interesting. But a lot of people are saying that now we're probably positioning ourselves to move up for a quarterback. I don't really see that. I'm not gonna lie. I think if anything, we may trade up for an elite tackle if we do plan on trading up. But then again, we may just be bad enough the remainder of this season to where we don't even have to trade up. So we'll see. Maybe that's just that we have high 1st round, 2nd round, and high 2 2nd rounds and a high 1st round pick. And we just use that to build around Howell or something like that. We may just end up staying put in the 2024 draft, even if we aren't in that range, we may just, you know, just try to take an elite tackle. We'll see. Who knows? But moving on to Montez Sweat, it's really interesting too because he has 6.5 sacks this season. The entire Bears defensive line has 6.5 sacks. That was probably enough right there. They saw that stat and was like, yeah, we got to do whatever we got to do to get this guy. But you got to remember also the Bears got 4.5 of those against Washington when we were giving up sacks to anybody. We were the get right game for anybody that needed sacks on their season for their team. So that's really interesting, man. I mean, I get it didn't feel like Montez Sweat was balling, but when you look at the fact that he had as many sacks as the entire Bears defensive line, that's a good and a bad. That's a bad thing for the Bears, and I guess a good thing for Montez Sweat. But again, I don't think he was that great. I mean, against the Bears in Week 5, he had 4 pressures, 1.5 sacks, 1 batted down pass, 1 run tackle, and 1 wide receiver screen chase down. That's pretty good, but that's not like an elite Myles Garrett level game. But then again, if it's Myles Garrett, you got to trade multiple firsts for him. So I guess a high second-round pick makes sense. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes to the Bears and next year ends up getting double-digit sacks like it's nothing. We'll see. You know how things typically go for the burgundy and gold there. But also, man, I just want to thank Montez Sweat. So I just want to take time out of this video before we start diving into Chase Young and everything and the future of this team to just basically say thank you to Montez Sweat, man. And hey, man, I will never, ever forget this play that you had against the Cowboys. National television, too, man.
Chiefs and Bucks, Bears and Pack. Here's a play made by the defense for the touchdown. Montez Sweat.
And again, I've always been rooting for you, Montez Sweat. Again, as a fellow Atlanta native, man, hey, man, best of luck to you. But when we're looking at the Bears situation, and shouts out to Nick Atridge and my boy Mark Bullock over there in the UK. Both of them are great follows on Twitter, because I completely agree. This is exactly what I was thinking when I first heard about the trade. I was like, are the Bears good? Like, are y'all okay? But their discourse on Twitter was a perfect breakdown of like, what's going on? Are the Bears okay? Type of thing. Because it goes back and forth. This is honestly best case scenario for Washington. If the Bears aren't signing them to an extension, I have no clue what they're doing. But that second round pick could be very high. I mean, I'm just assuming that like we trade Montez Sweat, the team that trades for him, you immediately hear either in the same tweet or a tweet soon afterwards, such and such team has also signed Montez Sweat to a long-term extension. I'm assuming when you trade for Montez Sweat, you already have the long-term extension already in place, the new contract in place, because what's the point of giving up a high second-round pick and he ends up walking? Because Mark Bullock then says, even if they are going to sign him long-term, why not just wait until free agency? Then Nick Atridge says, your guess is as good as mine. Only thought is that this gives them a chance to negotiate now instead of competing with other teams, maybe? And then Mark Bullock was like, I guess, but unless the contract is officially done already, there's nothing to stop Sweat from turning down an extension and either taking the tag or just walking in free agency. And then Nick Atridge was like, yeah, man, I'm doing the best I can to try to be devil's advocate and back up these Bears on the situation, but we just don't understand what this trade was for the Bears. I'm not getting it. If I'm on the Bears side, I'm definitely a little confused, probably upset, but at the very least confused, because you even have a Bears fan on Twitter that I found. He said, quote, let's start with love Sweat. I love Sweat, but this makes 0 sense. I understand acquiring proven commodity, but why not just wait until he's in the open market? Worried you'll get outbid? He's in the building now, so Sweat has all of the leverage. Bravo, he'll be 29 in 2025. So Bears fans are not happy about this. At least the ones that are really like thinking about it and breaking it down. But hey, man, maybe this is just a long-term play. You know, with them having 2 first-round picks, 2 potentially high first-round picks, or having their own in the Panthers, it's a little confusing because they seem like they're in rebuild mode, but maybe Montez Sweat is a part of that rebuild. They were willing to sacrifice a high second-round pick because they already have an additional high first-round pick, maybe, to have a long-term edge rusher. But again, you got to remember he will be 29 in 2025. But we'll see, though. Also, is it time to root for against the Bears and the Commanders for the remainder of the season? I know for a fact I'm rooting against the Bears. I can't root against the Commanders just yet, man. I'm not in full-blown tank mode just yet. But the Bears? Oh, man, I hope they lose every game for the rest of the season. Justin Fields, just chill out. Montez Sweat, go over there. I'm rooting for you, but, man, I'm going to need you to not lead to wins, man. We can't have that. But yeah, man, again, I appreciate his professionalism and everything, man. He gave his all. He was always Mr. One Step Away, it felt like, but this season it felt like it was a slight improvement, but it never ever reached what we expected of him. Maybe he'll find that for the Bears, because again, something about the burgundy and gold, something we're doing wrong, Jack Del Rio, whoever, to where we just don't get the most out of players like we should. And man, it's crazy because life comes at you fast when you remember that we just aren't good with second-round picks. Now, granted, we haven't had a second-round pick this high in a long time, but hey, man, life comes at you fast. You're excited. Ooh, high second-round pick, Bears second-round draft pick, basically almost like a late first, and you remember, but it's still a second round pick. You know how the Commanders get with second round picks. So now people are talking about maybe we need to trade that second for 3/3 or something, which is just terrible, man. It shouldn't be that bad. But hopefully the next regime doesn't have as much bad luck or just pure bad evaluation. We may not even be able to place it on luck. Maybe it's just purely just we suck. Hopefully the next regime just doesn't suck. Now moving on to Chase Young, this situation is really interesting. Things are starting to heat up. Literally since I was in the middle of recording this video, things started heating up for our boy Chase Young, man. It's starting to get really interesting. It's been reported from Grant Paulson that the Commanders preferred to trade Chase Young and keep Montez Sweat, but again, they just got the better offer for Montez Sweat. Stands to reason they found it hard to say no to a bad team giving up a number 2 pick, a second round pick. They may have just acquired a top 35 selection for a player Washington wasn't sure it will retain anyway. So it all makes sense on the Commander side. But continuing with Chase Young, again, the biggest thing there is that the Commanders preferred to trade away Chase Young to Montez Sweat, but the offer for Montez Sweat was so good, they were like, we got to do it. And then there was an update like an hour ago, a few minutes ago. NFL teams are calling the Commanders about trading for defensive end Montez Sweat. So it's discourse back and forth. The Commanders are actively calling to trade Montez Sweat, and then other teams are calling us. And then while I was in the middle of recording this video, like 5 minutes in, I saw a notification on my phone. Rumors: the Patriots have checked in on the Commanders on pass rusher Chase Young. It could be in play for him. So this is really interesting. If it's multiple teams interested in Chase Young, are they outbidding themselves? Is the stock just getting higher and higher and higher? And then eventually, sometime before 4 p.m. when the trade deadline ends, we'll just go ahead and pull the trigger on whatever the best offer is at that time. It sounds like probably more than likely both of them are gone, which surprises me. But hey, man, if we end up trading Chase Young, on top of we already traded Montez Sweat, we are completely 100% tearing down everything. Because I think you definitely have the cap space to at least pay one of them. After Montez Sweat is gone, you have the money to pay Chase Young long term if you want to. We're going to have almost like $95 million in cap space if you trade away Charles Leno this upcoming offseason. Not right now, but in the offseason. After the season ends, you can get a lot of cap space in return. It won't be anywhere near as much dead cap. So we'll have somewhere around like $100-something million in cap space if you really want to keep Chase Young long term. So if we trade him, this is just a complete rebuild tank type situation. That's very like alarming. Like, yeah, we're giving up on this season. We're done. Let's go ahead and tank for the best draft picks we can get outside of the draft picks we already acquired from trading away some veteran players. And also, if we end up trading away Chase Young and Montez Sweat all at the same time, that's how you know Josh Harris took over. Because you know Ron Rivera doesn't want to do that. You know Martin Mayhew doesn't. You know Jack Del Rio definitely doesn't either. So that means Josh Harris is officially taking over. And all of these other guys are just placeholders right now to potentially finish out the season if they're not fired. Things are really interesting. So, hey, Josh Harris is getting busy, man. This is only a few hours after the 76ers got Marcus Morris, Nick Batum, Robert Covington, KJ Martin, and multiple draft picks and a pick swap for the James Harden, PJ Tucker, and that Phillip kid to the Clippers. Like, Josh Harris is busy right now. This boy is signing checks. He's signing off trades and stuff like that. My boy Josh Harris is not playing right now. To do that blockbuster deal with the with the Clippers for his 76ers, and then for the Commanders to go around and do one of the biggest trade deadline deals so far as well with the Bears for his Commanders is interesting, man. Josh Harris sounds like he's the most active owner right now doing it. Shouts out to him, man. He not playing with y'all. My boy Josh Harris said he coming in here and is not playing games with any of y'all, man. He's that little meme of Buddy in court said, "I'm not here to play with y'all." That boy Josh Harris is not playing with a single one of y'all. So that's really interesting, man. I'm also seeing some report that Ron Rivera was extremely like emotionless when it came to this trade with Montez Sweat or something like that. That's a really, really random report. Let me see if I can find that. I saw that notification while I was in the middle of talking, and that didn't really make sense to me. Like, what does that have to really deal with anything? I don't understand. Let me see if I can find it at some point later in the video. I don't know what's going on. But also I'm seeing reports that multiple teams were interested in Montez Sweat, so that increased his trade value, and basically the Bears won the bid. Once they offered a high second-round pick, the Commanders pulled the trigger on that, so they may be doing something similar with Chase Young right now, where they're just letting the trades come in. Y'all keep outbidding each other, and then we'll pull the trigger once we actually like a range of what's going on. I wonder what's going on, though. I really wonder, like, what's going on behind the scenes, what type of trade offers the Commanders are getting for Chase Young right now. Is it thirds? Is it something as bad as fourths? I think if Chase Young walks, he probably gets you a third-round compensatory pick just like Montez Sweat. So maybe we're waiting for a third-round pick or higher. We'll see. But man, this Chase Young situation is very interesting because we'll see how the season goes if we don't end up trading him. But I wouldn't be surprised if he finishes the year out and balls out. I mean, I hope we sign him to a deal long term. I hope we keep him. Now that we already traded Montez Sweat, I think the obvious answer for me is to keep Chase Young long term. I like him. He's having a great season right now. Like, he's been balling. But these final 9, well, really up to that game against the Eagles a couple of days ago, I don't know what he was doing in that. But other than that, he's been hooping. He's been one of the highest rated, graded advanced statistics pass rushers, doing top 10 pass rushes according to advanced statistics and a lot of different metrics. We'll see how that goes. I just thought about the fact too that the Commanders play the Patriots this week. We already played the Bears and the Falcons, and then now we about to play the Patriots. We about to trade Chase Young to the Patriots just for him to go against us like in a few days. That's actually really crazy. I just thought about that. But hey man, speaking of Chase Young though, these final 9 games is going to say a lot. If we don't end up trading away Chase Young before this trade deadline, these last 9 games is going to completely determine what contract he gets. He's been really good so far this season, inconsistent, but really good, and has flashed a lot. But these last 9 games, if you lay an egg, even after these really good first half of season you had, this second half season, you don't have a good season, it's going to get ugly for you. We'll see how that goes, though. Chase Young is definitely having his best season, though. Right now, he ranks 8th in pressures via Pro Football Focus, grades well via pass rush win rate as well, too. And he's already within 2 sacks of tying his career high, and we still have another half of season to go, a slightly over half a season. So we'll see how this goes, man. Also, he'll probably end up getting double teamed more than now that Montez Sweat's gone, which is also something really interesting. So keep that in mind. If he ends up losing a little bit of production going through the rest of the season, if we don't end up trading him, that could be a potential reason why. Definitely, keep that context there. But really his problem is injury concerns. That's literally the only reason right now I believe that teams are willing to give up more for Sweat than Chase Young. I heard that report like last week as well, and I think this just confirms it, because Chase Young has literally been better than Montez Sweat this season. So it has to be because of the past injury concerns. But he's been healthy so far. He hasn't even been banged up this season. So I don't know. He had to miss the first game, but once he was back, he's been back. Really, I mean, he's literally been better than Montez Sweat pretty much every game this season, in my opinion, than really just that last game against the Eagles. Maybe one other game, but Chase Young has definitely been better than Montez Sweat overall this season. Now, Ian Rappaport says that Chase Young probably stays in Washington, but he said he did note there's 4 more hours to go, technically 3.5 by the time I'm recording this right now. Also, and remember, if the Commanders prefer to trade Chase Young and not Montez Sweat, that means that they don't expect to get anything as good as that high second-round pick we just got from the Bears, for reasons I've already explained. So don't expect for us to get a crazy, really good value draft pick out of Chase Young if we do trade him. It's going to be somewhere in between that high second-round pick that we got for Montez Sweat and somewhere late 3rd round, because again, if you let him walk, we're probably getting a 3rd round compensatory pick for him anyway. So now sounds like we're just gonna keep on rebuilding. I was really hoping that we could somehow make this work. It was all hope, it was no logic, but I knew deep inside that something was gonna happen. We were gonna end up not with both. By the time the 2024 regular season started next year, we weren't gonna have both of these guys on the roster for one reason or another. There were so many things that could have stopped it from happening, and it already stopped happening by just that already. Just within a couple of hours of leading into the real trade deadline window when things get busy. Grant Paulson brings up a great point too. If you're willing to trade Montez Sweat and take a step back on the defensive line, you should also be willing to do it at other spots. So like, I'm looking at a lot of these expiring contracts: Antonio Gibson, Curtis Samuel, Kendall Fuller, A lot of these veterans, I think we're going to end up paying Cameron Curl long term. There was a report that we really want to pay Cameron Curl long term. He's like our priority out of all of the names I just said. He's one of our priorities. We have a lot of expiring contracts. If you're going to trade Montez Sweat and you're trying to trade Chase Young, it sounds like you want to rebuild. So you might as well just go ahead and get rid of as many veterans for good value that you can get in return. Because first of all, on their end, why would they want to be a part of a rebuild? I mean, hopefully, I'm hoping as a fan the rebuild doesn't take more than a year or 2 years, but if it does, then so be it. As long as we end up winning a Super Bowl, you know, sometime soon within the next 5-10 years, I'm happy. At the very least, we're a true playoff contender, not one that just barely falls into its face and barely makes it as a wild card 7th seed or something like that. If we're a true playoff contender, a true Super Bowl contender, I'm happy. Especially if it's within like a few years or something. We'll see how this goes, but I just don't. I think you're in full sale mode at this point. You're not making moves to better your team to win as many games this season already by the fact that you traded Montez Sweat. Now, again, you can argue that it was because we felt like we couldn't pay him. So even if we do want to win games and make it to the playoffs, it's smart to just go ahead and trade him because we just don't see ourselves keeping him long term. Like I explained earlier, probably already talked to his agent about the numbers, and we could already foresee that weren't gonna be able to find a happy middle. But still, man, it's probably time to just sell, man. I mean, we basically wasted this defensive line window from 2020 to now. We just threw it all away, man. 2 good seasons, 2020 and 2022. 2 disappointing seasons in 2021 and 2023 overall so far. It's just like back and forth. Good season, bad season, good season, bad season for the defensive line. There's no excuse. I blame Sam Mills III for a lot of it, but even with him gone right now, still fairly disappointing. Again, I blame the secondary quite a bit because they're kind of just throwing the ball as quickly as they could against us. They just snap the ball, hurry up and get it out. Defensive line really has not much of a chance to get to the quarterback, and you can blame some of that on the secondary, but still at the same time, if the defensive line is supposed to be as elite as it's supposed to be, regardless of what's going on, you're supposed to produce more than they've been producing. So, hey, man, is it time to go in rebuild and evaluation mode? If you're in rebuild mode, you're definitely in evaluation mode, in my opinion. So does that mean that it's time to go ahead and just play Emmanuel Forbes and Quan Martin starter level minutes? I mean, if you don't care about winning that much, why not give your rookies more experience going into the second season, more tape to evaluate going into the second season to eventually, hopefully, make them better? Or is this just not a rebuild starter? Just a way to get some value back in somebody who was going to end up leaving anyway and you're just trying to recoup? We'll see. We'll see, especially against these Patriots within the next couple of hours if we trade Chase Young, and against these Patriots, how much we truly care about winning, or are we just trying to, you know, rebuild, tank potentially, and at the very least evaluate some of our younger guys. Chris Paul should have been starting sooner anyway, in my opinion, but now there's no reason not to start him. Even if Sadiq Charles were healthy, it's time to evaluate what you have so that this next regime, next coaching staff, front office, all of that type of stuff, GM, have a better idea of who's good and who's not, point blank, period. Or at the very least, even if they're not good yet, again, like an Emmanuel Forbes, you know, the more minutes they play, the more snaps they get out there and do, the more mistakes they make. That's just more teaching tools and tape for them to evaluate in the offseason to be better next year. So we'll see what happens if Young doesn't get traded. It's going to be really interesting. But first of all, it's time for Tuhill to start. Now that Montez Sweat's gone, even with Chase Young still here, I think he's going to be the one that starts opposite of Chase Young. And remember, he led our defensive line in sacks in that Falcons win, so he has some something to him, a little something. I'm not expecting him to go out there and ball out for the rest of the season, but I'm expecting him to be decent. Him and James Smith-Williams as part of the rotation, I think they'll be pretty good. I'm pretty excited about it. This is your chance, Casey Tuhill. I'm talking to you right now. This is your chance. Let's get to it, man. Also, shouts out my boy Mark Bullock for bringing this up. Opposing teams can currently just slide their protection to the left and have extra help versus Jonathan Allen and Chase Young. So I do agree with Mark Bullock that we do need to occasionally shift one other to the other side. It needs to be Jonathan Allen and Chase Young split up occasionally, dog. We can't have Chase Young, Jonathan Allen, Daron Payne, Casey Tuhill, used to be Montez Sweat all of the time. That was one of my biggest complaints with Jack Del Rio, that he wasn't getting creative and at the very least moving the defensive line around. You know every snap where Chase Young's gonna be right next to Jonathan Allen. Can we switch that occasionally, especially now that we lost Montez Sweat and teams are just literally going to shift the offensive line to worry about Jonathan Allen and Chase Young? Prioritize those two and then just live with whatever you get from Daron Payne and Casey Tuhill. But we'll see, man. Washington originally traded up to take Sweat in the first round by trading 2 second-rounders. So getting one back in return is actually pretty decent. I'm not going to lie. It took us 2 second-rounders to get Sweat to get a few years of pretty decent play, some flashes, to help us win some games, and then to get half of the value in return, kind of technically more than half the value, because that second-round pick we gave up, none of them definitely was not as high as this Bears one. So technically netted positive on that for sure. So the next regime, next head coach should definitely thank Rivera and crew for getting that done. Whoever got it done, whoever did it, hey man, shouts out to you, man. Shouts out to you. And also shouts out to Washington today for bringing up a good point. This is going to be one of the most attractive head coaching openings in the NFL, especially if Eric Bieniemy doesn't automatically get promoted to head coach. This is going to be because draft capital, cap space, talent on both sides of the ball to build around, like Terry Jonathan Allen, all of that type of stuff. Young and capable quarterback. I'm a big Sam Howell fan, like I said earlier. I'm not in the, okay, we could take that extra draft pick and package it together to trade up for a quarterback. I believe in Sam Howell. I think it's time to build around him, in my personal opinion. So we can now have 3 picks in the top 40 draft picks of this upcoming draft and like $95 million worth of cap space. I'm telling you, man, this next football operations, front office, whatever, they're going to be pretty happy with what they have. I think this is a more attractive destination than people think, especially now with Dan Snyder gone, Josh Harris taking over. And Josh Harris has proven with his other professional teams, specifically the 76ers, he's willing to do whatever it takes to win, even if he's going to take a chance and it fails with like James Harden trying to pair him with Joel Embiid and stuff like that. He's willing to pay his coaches some of the most money that his coaches are some of the highest paid coaches in their relative sports. Like, he's going to pay top dollar. He's not cheap. He's not going to skimp on anybody. Scared money don't make money. Josh Harris believes in that fully. He is going to pay whatever it takes to win. So this has to be an attractive destination for people. I really do. And then again, the DC area, the DMV, should be one of the top markets in sports. Sadly, the basketball team just hasn't been very impressive. We already know what the NFL team has been, but like, it should be up there with like New York, Chicago, Atlanta, Miami, LA, and stuff like that, Houston. The DMV area, like, it should be one of the top markets. Arguably even a bigger market than even like Atlanta and stuff like that, I can admit. But with NFL team and NBA team being so disappointed for so long, it just doesn't feel like it. But this is a top market team. It should be, and somebody could come in here and basically revive a sleeping giant. And also a reminder, if we don't fire Rivera now, like I said earlier, he's basically just a placeholder for the rest of the season. So don't panic. I know a lot of people want Rivera gone, even if he's not gone before this trade deadline is over, and which I highly doubt happens because it probably would already happen by now. He's probably just a placeholder, just, you know, just having fun, finishing the season with this team. Josh Harris probably just respects him enough to give him that, but I'm pretty sure Ron Rivera is definitely gone after this season. Again, I've heard reports that we plan on paying Cameron Curl long term, so I don't think you need to worry about that. Again, we have ridiculous amounts of cap space. I think we're good to go there. I think you can pay Chase Young, Cameron Curl, and whoever else you want to pay, and still have money left over for the next regime to come in and spend money in free agency if they want to. But to me, I definitely know that I want Sam Howell and Eric Bieniemy in 2024. Eric Bieniemy, offensive coordinator, head coach, whatever. Sam Howell is your quarterback. I think we can definitely win with that if we like actually build around it and make the right moves. Have a good draft to where your top 3 round rookies, your first, second, and third round picks don't do anything for you. It'd be different if we were the 49ers and we have all pros and pro bowlers everywhere. That's why their draft picks aren't contributing heavily, especially halfway through a season. We're different. We only have 3 wins halfway into the season, and our first, second, and third round picks are barely playing. There's just no excuse. That's just a terrible draft. Hopefully the next regime, I mean, I feel like by default, the only way you can go is up when you're at the bottom. So I feel like by default, this next regime is just automatically going to be better, especially at player evaluation and drafting. But hopefully they're way better. But hey, man, as much as I love Sam Howell and Eric Bieniemy and I believe in their potential, they got to finish the second half of the season very strong to earn that that chance to be our starting quarterback and offensive coordinator, head coach, whatever, going into the 2024 season and beyond, to basically be the pairing that Josh Harris has to basically stake his name beside. This is his first real attempt at an NFL team. These are the guys that he officially hired. He didn't acquire these guys. He chose these guys. So, hey, Sam Howell and Eric Bieniemy, you are auditioning to be a part of Josh Harris's rebuild in this next era of burgundy and gold in the DMV area. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button. I really appreciate y'all, man. Let me know in the comment section how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please let me know how you feel about everything. Do you agree with this trade? Do you like it? Do you feel like it's time to rebuild? Do you feel like we got the most out of this trade from the Bears? Do you agree with me where it's like, what are the Bears doing right now? All of that type of stuff. Let me know how you feel about Chase Young potentially getting traded. Do you want him to? Do you want to keep him long term? Do you want to pay Cameron Curl and all these guys long term? Let me know everything how you feel about the video. I'm gonna try to do my best to get in the comment section and read and reply to as much stuff as possible, but I just be busy. I really appreciate y'all. If you want to support the channel, donate to $RicoScores. That's the Cash App, because YouTube is still tripping. If you want to donate to PayPal, if you prefer that, WilliamAC94@gmail.com. All of that information is in the description of this video, description of every video, every live stream, everywhere, every time. So I appreciate y'all. Feel it in your heart to donate. Really appreciate it. I'm gonna catch y'all later. Keep y'all updated with everything. I'm out.